Leo, my brother, shot me a look from across the courtroom aisle. It was that same smirk, that nasty, triumphant grin he'd always had, the one I remembered from my childhood right before he'd smash one of my dolls. Next to him, my parents, Charles and Victoria, sat with their backs straight, radiating pride. They weren't there for me. They were there to witness my execution. Not a literal one, but a financial one. They wanted me gone, erased from their world. To them, I was Ava, the screw-up, the daughter who walked away from the family empire to tinker with computers in a tiny apartment. They had dragged me to this sterile, soulless courtroom to have me legally declared bankrupt. They had fabricated lies. They had faked documents. Their goal was to humiliate me so completely that I'd have no choice but to crawl back, defeated, and plead for their forgiveness. I sat at my table, completely alone. My hands were resting on the polished wood, perfectly still. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't on the verge of tears. I was simply waiting. Judge Eleanor Vance leafed through the massive file on her bench, the rustle of paper the only sound in the dead quiet room. Then she paused. Her finger rested on a specific page. She looked up, the light glinting off her spectacles. "Orion Cybernetics," she said, her voice sharp and clear, slicing through the tension. The same company that just landed the $212 million contract with the Department of Defense? Leo's smirk evaporated. In that single breathtaking moment, all the oxygen seemed to vanish from the room. They had come here to bury a failure. They were about to find out they had just tried to bury a titan. But before we get into the details, do me a favor and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. To really get why I was in a courtroom staring down my own brother, you need to understand the Harrison family. We weren't a family that did hugs. We weren't the type for backyard barbecues or family game nights. We were a family built on image. We were a living, breathing advertisement for success. My father, Charles Harrison, had built a high-end real estate empire from the ground up. In our city of Westwood, if you lived in a sprawling mansion or a luxury penthouse, chances were it had been sold by Harrison Estates. My father adored that. He loved seeing his name on the for sale signs of the most exclusive properties in town. To him, the Harrison name wasn't just a name, it was a brand. It signified wealth, influence, and power. My mother, Victoria, was the chief curator of that brand. She didn't have a traditional job, but she worked tirelessly to maintain the illusion of our perfect life. She chaired the hospital galas, hosted the political fundraisers, and ensured our clothes were always designer, our hair was always styled, and our smiles were always perfectly, painfully fixed in place whenever we were in public. And then there were us, the children. Leo, the eldest, was the crown prince. From the moment he was born, my father had anointed him as the heir to the throne. Leo was charismatic, good-looking, and effortlessly popular. He played golf in high school, not because he enjoyed it, but because my father wanted a son who could close deals on the golf course. His grades were mediocre, but my father's hefty donations to the school ensured that was never a problem. When Leo crashed a car or got into a bar fight, it was just boys will be boys, a little story to laugh about at the next dinner party. Chloe was the youngest. She was the family's little doll. Pretty, charming, and quiet until she wanted something. She figured out early on that a few well-placed tears could get her a new pony, and a compliment about my mother's dress would get her a new designer bag. She was being groomed to marry well, a mirror image of my mother's own path. And then there was me, Ava, the middle child, the anomaly. I wasn't outgoing like Leo or sweetly manipulative like Chloe. I was quiet. I preferred books to parties. I liked dismantling old electronics to understand their wiring. I loved the clean, logical certainty of mathematics. In the Harrison household, being book smart wasn't an asset. It was a social liability. "Ava, put that textbook away, you're wrinkling the tablecloth," my mother would hiss. Ava, please stop talking about algorithms. You're putting our guests to sleep. My father would sigh. I grew up feeling like an outsider in my own home. I had a roof over my head and food on the table, but I was fundamentally unseen. The real fracture happened when I started college. My father had insisted I major in real estate management. His plan for me was clear. I would be the numbers person for his company. Leo would be the face, the one making grand speeches and shaking hands, while I'd be tucked away in a back office, managing the accounts and making sure Leo had plenty of capital to play with. I honestly tried to follow his plan. I went to the lectures, I read the case studies, but my heart wasn't in it. I didn't care about property values or zoning laws. I was utterly captivated by code, by systems architecture, by the elegant dance of data moving through networks. The day I quit was a Tuesday. I remember it was unseasonably warm. I drove back from campus, walked straight into my father's home office, and told him I was dropping out of the real estate program. He was sitting behind his enormous oak desk, signing checks. He didn't even bother to look up at first. "You're doing what now?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I'm switching my major," I said, my own voice trembling slightly. Or, "I'm leaving. I want to build things, Dad. Technology. I don't want to sell houses." He finally looked up. His face was flushed with anger. He took off his glasses and placed them on the desk with deliberate slowness. That was never a good sign. "You are a deeply ungrateful child," he said. He wasn't yelling. He was stating it as if it were an undeniable truth. "I pay for your education. I pay for your car. I have built a path for you, Ava, a secure, golden path. And you want to throw it all away to go play with computers. It's the future," I argued feebly. "It's a hobby for geeks," Leo scoffed. He was lounging in the doorway, munching on an apple, having materialized at the first sign of drama. "Let her go, Dad. She's not cut out for the real world anyway. She doesn't have the stomach for it." My mother drifted in then, sensing the conflict. She immediately took my father's side without even knowing the cause. "Ava, darling, don't upset your father. You know his stress levels." "I'm leaving," I repeated, feeling a new resolve. "I'm dropping out." My father stood up, his towering frame casting a long shadow. "If you walk out of that program, you walk out of this family. I will not fund a failure. I will not waste a single dollar on some foolish fantasy. I'll make my own money," I choked out. Leo let out a loud, barking laugh. "You? Ava, you can barely make a dinner reservation without panicking. You think you're going to build a company? You're a joke." "You will fail," my father said, pointing a finger at me. "I guarantee it. And when you do, don't you dare come crawling back to us." I looked at the three of them, my mother subtly checking her reflection in a framed picture. My father, his face a mask of cold fury. My brother smirking, a piece of apple stuck to his chin. "I will never beg you for anything," I said. That night, I packed 2 suitcases. I took my clothes, my laptop, and the $2,500 I'd saved from part-time jobs. As I walked out the front door, no one tried to stop me. No one said a word. Chloe was on the sofa watching some reality show. She glanced up, saw my bags, and her eyes went right back to the television. I got into my beat-up old sedan, the one car my father hadn't bothered to take back, and I just drove. I wept for the first hour on the highway. I felt pathetic and foolish. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was the biggest mistake of my life. But then, the tears dried up, and something else took their place. A cold, hard resolve. For the next 8 years, that resolve was the only fuel I had. I wasn't invited home for Christmas. They didn't call for my birthday. I saw their lives unfold on social media. I saw Leo with a new sports car. I saw Chloe's ridiculously lavish wedding to some investment banker, a wedding I learned about from a shared post. I saw my parents on luxury cruises in the Mediterranean. They looked happy. They looked perfect. They had simply edited me out of the picture. I heard from an old high school acquaintance that they told people I'd had some kind of breakdown. Ava went a bit off the rails, my mother had apparently told her book club. She got involved with a strange crowd. We tried to help, but she just pushed us away. They were manufacturing a narrative to cover up their own cruelty. Sometimes, late at night, I'd be so lonely I could feel it in my bones. I'd be eating ramen over my sink in a tiny, cold apartment, and I'd pick up my phone, my thumb hovering over my mom's number. I just wanted to hear her voice. I just wanted my dad to tell me he was proud of me. But then, I'd remember Leo's mocking laugh. "You're a joke." I'd remember my father's pointing finger. "You will crawl back begging." And I would put the phone down. I eventually understood that they didn't hate me for leaving. They hated me because I was different. They hated me because I didn't need their money or their name to have a sense of self. And that terrified them. But they were so utterly convinced I was failing. About 6 years after I left, I bumped into Leo at a coffee shop downtown. I was in a hoodie and jeans, exhausted from working a 36-hour coding marathon. He was in a bespoke suit, looking like he'd just stepped out of a magazine. He looked me up and down, a sneer twisting his lips. "Still playing with those little computers, Ava?" he asked. "You look awful." Mom and Dad were right. It's actually kind of tragic. "I'm doing okay, Leo," I said quietly. "Here," he said, pulling a crisp $20 bill from his wallet. He flicked it onto my table, where it landed in a splash of my coffee. "Get yourself a decent meal, and don't tell Dad I gave this to you." He walked out, chuckling to himself. I left the money there, soaking in the dark liquid. He had no idea. None of them did. They saw my tired eyes and my messy bun, and they saw a failure. They didn't see the lines of code spooling behind my eyes. They didn't see the digital fortress I was building in obscurity. They had bet against me. They put all their chips on Leo, the golden prince, and they gambled that Ava, the weird one, would self-destruct. They were about to lose that bet, and they were about to lose it in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. When I left my family's orbit, I didn't have a concrete plan. I just had a burning obsession. I found a studio apartment in a rough part of the city, right above a 24-hour laundromat that hummed and shook the floorboards at all hours. The walls were paper thin, and the heating was a joke. In the winter, I'd sit at my desk wearing 3 layers and fingerless gloves, my breath fogging in the air as I typed. I had $2,500. In the world of tech startups, that's not even a rounding error. It was nothing. But it was everything I had. I spent half of it on a more powerful server and a second monitor. The rest went to first month's rent and a bulk supply of instant noodles. I officially founded Orion Cybernetics on a gray Wednesday morning. There was no launch party, no champagne toast. It was just me, perched on an overturned milk crate because I couldn't afford a proper chair, staring at a blank screen of code. My goal was to build high-level security software, not the kind that protects your online shopping, but the kind that protects a nation's infrastructure. I saw the glaring vulnerabilities in government systems, the gaping holes in military communication networks. I knew I could build something better, but getting anyone to listen to a 24-year-old woman in a hoodie was nearly impossible. That first year was a special kind of hell. I made hundreds of cold calls. I sent thousands of emails. "Who are you?" they'd ask. "I'm Ava Harrison," I'd say. "And who's your backer? Which firm is behind you?" "It's just me." Then, click, the line would go dead. It happened over and over. I ran out of my initial savings in 4 months. I took a job waiting tables at a dingy pub at night. My schedule was brutal. I'd code from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., then rush to the pub to serve drinks until 2 a.m. My feet were always sore. My back constantly ached, and I lived in a perpetual state of exhaustion. But the cash tips kept the lights on and the servers running. I distinctly remember one night stumbling home around 3 a.m. I was counting my tips on the floor of my dark apartment. I had made $50. It wasn't enough to cover my internet bill. I just sat there and sobbed. I thought about my father's huge, warm house. I thought about how easy it would be to just call him. All I had to do was say, "You were right, Dad. I'm a failure." But I couldn't. I would rather live on the street than give him that satisfaction. So I got up, washed my face with cold water, and went back to my computer. The breakthrough finally came in year 2. A small subcontractor for the Air Force needed a critical patch for a drone guidance system. It was a tiny, low-paying, high-pressure job. No one else wanted it because the deadline was insane. I took it. I didn't sleep for 3 straight days. I subsisted on coffee until my hands were shaking, but I delivered the code. It was flawless. It was efficient. It was beautiful. I submitted it with 10 minutes to spare. The next day, the project lead called me. "Who the hell wrote this?" he asked, his voice gruff. "I did," I said, bracing for criticism. There was a pause. "This is the cleanest, most efficient code I've seen in a decade," he said. "Can you do more?" That was the crack of light. 1 tiny contract led to 2. 2 led to 5. I finally quit the pub. I hired my first employee, a quiet genius named Marcus, whom I'd met in an online cryptography forum. We worked out of my apartment, surrounded by empty pizza boxes, writing code that was now helping to secure military satellites. By year 5, Orion Cybernetics had a real office in a modest tech park. We had a team. We had actual significant revenue. That was the year I met Liam. I was at a tech conference, hiding in a corner as usual because I still hated big crowds. He was an aerospace engineer. He didn't ask about my family or my background. He just lit up when I started debating the future of quantum encryption with him. We were married a year later. I took his last name. I became Ava Reed. It was one of the best choices I ever made. It was like a shield. To the world, Ava Harrison, the disgraced daughter, had vanished. In her place was Ava Reed, the quiet, rising CEO of a niche tech company. My family didn't read industry publications. They didn't follow the world of government contracting. They read society columns and real estate journals. If it wasn't about property or parties, it didn't exist. So they missed everything. They missed it when Orion hit $10 million in annual revenue in year 7. They missed it when a major tech journal named me one of their innovators to watch. And they definitely missed the big one. Year 8. The Department of Defense put out a call for a complete overhaul of their secure communications infrastructure. It was a gargantuan contract. The giants were all bidding: Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, the usual suspects, and us, Orion Cybernetics. We were the long shot, the tiny boat in a sea of battleships. But our technology was better. It was leaner, faster, and more secure. I presented the proposal myself. I stood in a secure room at the Pentagon in front of 5-star generals and stoic intelligence directors. I wasn't the scared girl from my father's study anymore. I wasn't the daughter being told to be quiet. I spoke for an hour, my voice steady and clear. I answered every complex question they threw at me. I showed them the future. 2 weeks later, the call came. "Ms. Reed," the general said, "congratulations. We're going with Orion." The contract was for $212 million. I just sat there in my office, the glass walls offering a panoramic view of the mountains. I had a team of over 100 employees just outside my door. I had a loving husband at home, and I was pregnant with our first child, a daughter we planned to name Maya. I had done it. I had built a giant. And I had done it without a single cent of Charles Harrison's money. I had done it without Leo's approval. I looked at the signed contract on my desk and felt a profound sense of peace I'd never experienced before. But peace is a fragile thing when you have vultures for family. 3 weeks after I signed that contract, the envelope arrived. It wasn't a card of congratulations. I was at home looking at paint swatches for the nursery. Liam was making us tea. The doorbell rang. A process server handed me a thick legal envelope. I tore it open. Petition for involuntary bankruptcy. Petitioner: Leo Harrison. Debtor: Ava Harrison, also known as Ava Reed. I read it 3 times. My hands started to shake, not with fear, but with a surge of disbelief and white-hot rage. The document alleged that I owed Leo Harrison $1.5 million. It claimed I had borrowed the money 8 years ago as seed funding for my failed business venture. It claimed I was now insolvent, hiding assets and refusing to pay. It was all a lie, every single word. I had never borrowed a penny from Leo. But then I saw the loan agreement they had attached as evidence. It was dated a week before I left home, and it had my signature at the bottom, a signature that looked uncannily like mine, but just slightly off. I knew instantly what they had done. They'd forged it. I understood their game in a flash. They must have heard whispers, seen a picture of me online, or maybe someone mentioned I was doing okay for myself. They had no idea about the $212 million contract. They probably thought I had a little money saved up, and they wanted to take it. Or maybe it was just about cruelty. Maybe Leo, who I knew had a gambling problem, needed a quick cash infusion and decided his estranged sister was an easy mark. They assumed I was still that weak, scared girl. They thought I would panic and pay them off just to make the problem disappear. Liam looked at the papers, his face pale. "Ava, what is this?" "It's a declaration of war," I said quietly. I stood up, feeling the first tiny flutter of our baby kicking inside me. "Call Eleanor," I told Liam. Eleanor Vance was the most feared corporate litigator in the state, and she was on my company's payroll for a reason. "My family wants to see me in court," I said, my eyes fixed on the forged signature. "They want to prove to the world that I'm a failure." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "I'm going to show them exactly how successful I am." 3 weeks after landing the biggest deal of my life, my family came to burn it all down. They didn't use fire. They used paper. The petition for involuntary bankruptcy sat on my kitchen island, a venomous snake coiled in a stack of white paper. I was in my lawyer Eleanor Vance's office the very next morning. Eleanor was a force of nature, a woman so sharp and focused, she made sharks look friendly. She reviewed the documents in complete silence, the only sounds in her minimalist office being the soft ticking of a clock and the rustle of turning pages. "This is exceptionally aggressive," Eleanor said at last, setting down her glasses. "Your brother is alleging he loaned you $1.5 million in seed capital. He claims the loan has matured, you're refusing to pay, and that you're insolvent, that you have no assets to cover your debts. It's a complete fabrication," I said. My voice was level, but my insides were churning. I never took a dime from him. When I left home, I had $2,500 to my name. That's it. Eleanor tapped a perfectly manicured finger on the document. "He has a promissory note here, Ava, with your signature." I looked at the copy. There it was, Ava Harrison. The script was a little too flowery, a little too perfect. It looked like how I used to sign my name when I was a teenager. "That's a forgery," I said flatly. "He must have lifted it from an old yearbook or some school permission slip. Look at the date. This is dated June 10th, 8 years ago. I was still living at home then. I hadn't even conceptualized the company yet." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I believe you, but in the court's eyes, this is just real enough to get the case opened. And that's where the real danger lies." She leaned forward, her expression turning grave. "Ava, do you have any idea what happens if a major defense contractor is declared bankrupt?" A cold dread seeped into my bones. "Tell me." "The Department of Defense mandates absolute financial stability," she explained. "The moment you are in active bankruptcy proceedings, your security clearance is flagged for review. Your existing contracts are immediately put on hold. If this goes through, if a judge even temporarily believes you're broke, the government will pull that $212 million deal so fast it'll make your head spin. You will lose everything." I sank back into the leather chair, the air knocked out of my lungs. This wasn't just a financial shakedown, it was a corporate assassination. If Leo won, he'd get $1.5 million he never earned. But even if he lost, The mere accusation, the public filing, could shatter my company's reputation. In my industry, trust and stability are the currency. If the Pentagon saw me as a financial risk, I was finished. Why? I whispered, mostly to myself. Why would he do this? He can't know about the contract. He thinks I'm a failure. Cruelty rarely needs a logical reason, Eleanor said dryly. He probably has debts. He assumes you have some money stashed away, maybe married someone with a bit of wealth. He wants to squeeze you. He fully expects you to fall apart. He expects me to call him, I realized out loud. He's waiting for me to call sobbing and offer him $20,000 to make it all go away. Precisely, Eleanor confirmed. It's a textbook bully maneuver. Hit them with a devastating blow, watch them crumble, and then grab whatever you can from the wreckage. She looked at me intently. So, what's our move? We can fight this quietly. We can try to negotiate a settlement. I thought about the nights I'd spent shivering in my apartment. I thought about living on instant noodles. I thought about the way Leo had laughed when he tossed that $20 bill at me. I thought about my father's final words, "You will crawl back begging." They had hunted me down. I had kept my distance for 8 years. I had built a new life, a new family, a new identity, and they had shown up on my doorstep with a torch. I stood up and smoothed down my dress. No settlements, I said. No backroom deals. I met Eleanor's gaze. I want to go to court. I want them to stand before a judge and repeat these lies under oath. And then, I said, my voice dropping, I want to bury them. Eleanor's lips curved into a slow, terrifying smile. I was hoping you'd say that. We spent the next 3 days in a whirlwind of preparation. Sleep was a luxury we couldn't afford. We brought in forensic accountants. We dug up bank statements from 8 years ago. We hired a digital forensics expert to analyze the supposed loan document. What we discovered was almost comical in its audacity. Leo was lazy. He had used a generic loan template he downloaded from the internet. The file's metadata, its digital DNA, showed that it had been created 6 days ago, not 8 years ago. He had literally cobbled it together on his laptop the previous Tuesday. He's arrogant, and he's sloppy, Eleanor said, staring at the forensic report. He thinks because his last name is Harrison, the rules don't apply to him. He thinks a judge will just be impressed by his expensive suit and take his word for it. He's never faced a real consequence in his life, I said. My father cleaned up every mess he ever made. Well, Eleanor said, closing her laptop with a decisive snap, your father can't fix this one. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the half-painted nursery, my hands resting on my pregnant belly. I found myself talking to my unborn daughter. They want to take away your future, I whispered to the quiet room. They want to take the home we're building. They want to make your mother look like a liar. I felt a tiny, definite kick, almost as if in agreement. Don't you worry, I told her. Tomorrow we're going to teach them a lesson. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the trap, and my family was about to walk right into it. Thursday morning dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that leached the color from the world. I chose my outfit with strategic care. I didn't wear a power suit or expensive jewelry. I wore a simple navy dress and a plain beige trench coat. I pulled my hair back into a simple, low ponytail. I wanted to look unassuming. I wanted to look like the struggling, failed daughter they expected to see. If I showed up in a $5,000 blazer, they might get suspicious. I needed them to feel confident. I needed them to feel superior. Eleanor drove me to the courthouse. We carried in 3 large, heavy banker's boxes, all labeled evidence in bold letters. As we entered the courtroom, the air was thick with the smells of old wood polish and quiet desperation. And there they were, my family. They had turned this into a social outing. They occupied the entire front row on the plaintiff's side. Leo was in a custom-tailored charcoal suit that likely cost more than my first car. His hair was perfectly coiffed. He was laughing with his lawyer, looking completely at ease. like a man who had already won and was just there for the formality. My father, Charles, sat right behind him. He looked older than I remembered, his face puffier and more florid, but his eyes were the same, cold, appraising, and full of judgment. He scanned the courtroom as if he owned it, and when his gaze fell on me, he didn't even blink. He just stared, as if I were a speck of dirt on a window he wanted to have cleaned. My mother, Victoria, was giving an Oscar-worthy performance. She was dabbing at her dry eyes with a delicate lace handkerchief, whispering loudly to my sister, Chloe. "It's just so heartbreaking," I overheard her say, "to see her end up this way. We really did try, didn't we? We did everything we could." Chloe nodded dutifully. My little sister. She looked immaculate, of course, complete with a string of pearls. She gave me a look of pure pity. Or maybe it wasn't pity. Maybe it was satisfaction. They didn't speak to me. No one said, "Hello, Ava." No one asked how I'd been. They just watched me walk to the defendant's table and sit down. I felt tiny in the large wooden chair. But beneath the table, my hands were balled into fists. "Ignore them," Eleanor whispered. "Don't give them the satisfaction of a reaction." "I'm fine," I murmured. And I was. My heart was beating in a slow, steady rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. The bailiff's voice boomed. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Margaret Vance presiding. Judge Vance entered. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, short gray hair, and a face that suggested she had zero tolerance for nonsense. I knew her reputation. Eleanor had briefed me. She was notoriously tough on fraud and despised liars. She settled into her chair and adjusted her robes. In the matter of the bankruptcy petition against Ava Harrison, she read from the docket. She peered over her glasses. "Counsel, please identify yourselves." Leo's lawyer, a slick-looking man with a garish tie, stood up. "Jameson Ford for the petitioner, Mr. Leo Harrison." Eleanor stood. Eleanor Vance for the alleged debtor, Ms. Ava Reed, formerly Harrison. My father let out a loud, derisive snort at the phrase, "alleged debtor." The sound echoed in the silent room. The judge's head snapped up. "Sir," Judge Vance said, her eyes fixed on him, "is there something you'd like to contribute?" My father's face turned a blotchy red. "No, Your Honor, it's just a tragic situation." "Keep your personal commentary to yourself," the judge said curtly. She turned back to Leo's lawyer. "Mr. Ford, proceed. Tell me why we're here." Mr. Ford smoothed his suit jacket and strode to the center of the room. He began to paint a picture. It was pure fiction. "Your Honor," he began, his voice like warm syrup, "this is a simple, sad case of a family loan gone wrong. 8 years ago, my client, a supportive and loving brother, loaned his sister $1.5 million. She had a dream of starting a little computer business. He wanted to help her. I saw my mother nod from the gallery, dabbing at another phantom tear. Mr. Harrison gave her this money in good faith, the lawyer continued. He waited patiently for repayment. But the business, as we all feared, failed. Ms. Harrison has not paid back a single dollar. She has ignored his calls. She is, for all intents and purposes, insolvent. We are simply asking the court to liquidate her few remaining assets so my client can recover what little he can. Leo looked down at his hands on the table, a perfect portrayal of a wounded, long-suffering victim. It was a masterful performance. He claims she is insolvent, the judge asked. No ability to pay. None, Your Honor, Mr. Ford said with confidence. She has no declared income of significance. She lives a modest life. Her supposed company, Orion Cybernetics, has no discernible market footprint. It's a shell corporation at best. I almost let out a laugh. No discernible market footprint. Eleanor placed a restraining hand on my arm. Wait, her grip said. Not yet. We have the promissory note, of course, Mr. Ford said, handing a document to the bailiff, signed by Ava Harrison. The judge took the paper. She glanced at it, then at me. "Miss Vance," she said, "does your client deny this debt?" Eleanor rose slowly, a picture of calm confidence. "We deny everything, Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and crisp. "The debt is a fantasy. The document is a forgery. And the claim that my client is insolvent is, well, it's demonstrably false." "False?" the judge queried. "Yes," Eleanor said. "Mr. Ford claims Orion Cybernetics is a failed shell company." Eleanor picked up one of our thick binders. She held it aloft. "In this binder, Your Honor, are the fully audited financials for Orion Cybernetics for the last fiscal year, along with sworn affidavits from the company's chief financial officer." Mr. Ford rolled his eyes dramatically. "Objection, Your Honor. This is likely just a smokescreen. A few fabricated invoices don't prove solvency. I'm sure the court is capable of making that determination." Eleanor replied coolly, handing the binder to the bailiff. The judge accepted the heavy binder. She opened it to the first page. The room was silent. My family was still smirking, convinced this was a desperate last-ditch bluff. They thought I was handing over fake numbers to save face. They thought they had me. They didn't know that the binder contained far more than just tax returns. It contained the official press release from the Department of Defense. It contained the award letter for contract number XG 44-2-19B. Judge Vance flipped a page, then another. Then she stopped. Her eyebrows shot up. She adjusted her glasses, leaning closer to the page. She looked at the cover of the file again, as if to confirm what she was reading. Then she looked back at the document. "Mr. Ford," the judge said, and her voice had changed completely. The boredom was gone. It was now sharp, like a blade. "Yes, Your Honor?" Leo's lawyer asked, sensing the sudden shift in the room's temperature. His smile faltered. "Did you perform any due diligence on the debtor's company before filing this petition?" We checked public records, Your Honor. There wasn't much to see." "Orion Cybernetics," the judge said, reading directly from the page. "Is this the entity you are attempting to force into bankruptcy?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked up, her gaze settling directly on me. For the first time, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She wasn't looking at a defendant anymore. She was looking at a headline she'd probably read in the Wall Street Journal that very morning. "Counsel," the judge said, her voice dropping to a dangerously calm level. "Are you aware that this company," she tapped the page with her finger, "is the same company that was just awarded a $212 million contract with the United States government?" The silence that followed was a physical thing. It pressed down on the room, thick and suffocating. Leo's head shot up. My father froze mid-scoff. My mother's hand, holding the handkerchief, paused halfway to her face. The trap had just sprung. The silence in the courtroom was so absolute it felt like a pressure against my eardrums. $212 million, Judge Vance repeated, slowly and deliberately. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. A bomb she had just detonated in the middle of the room. She looked over the top of her glasses at Leo's lawyer, Mr. Ford. The man's slick, practiced confidence had vanished. He looked as if he'd just been punched in the gut. A sheen of sweat popped out on his forehead, glistening under the fluorescent lights. Your Honor," Mr. Ford stammered, his voice suddenly hoarse. I was not made aware of any such contract. My client assured me the debtor was penniless. We have seen no evidence of this income." "Because you didn't bother to look," the judge snapped back. She angled her computer monitor on the bench so they could all see. Displayed on the screen was the front page of the Wall Street Journal's business section from that morning. The headline was stark: "Orion Cybernetics secures pivotal Pentagon deal." "Did you not even Google the company you are attempting to dismantle?" Leo shot to his feet, unable to contain himself. He was used to being in control, and he could feel it slipping away. "It's a lie," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's lying, Your Honor. Ava doesn't have a real company. She messes around with computers in her basement. She faked that website. She's trying to trick the court." "Sit down," Mr. Ford hissed, grabbing Leo's arm and yanking him back into his chair with surprising force. Judge Vance's eyes narrowed into slits. She looked at Leo with an expression of pure, unadulterated contempt. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice now lethally quiet, "are you now accusing the Wall Street Journal and the Department of Defense of being part of your sister's conspiracy?" My father Charles was staring at me. His face had gone from smug to shocked to utterly terrified. He understood business. He understood that you do not lie about federal contracts in a federal courtroom. He was frantically doing the math in his head, and the numbers were clearly horrifying him. "Ms. Vance," the judge said, turning to my lawyer, "is this contract verified?" "It is, Your Honor," Eleanor said calmly. "The contract number is XG44-2-19B. It can be verified in real time on the DOD's public procurement database. We've also submitted bank statements showing the initial wire transfer of $25 million cleared yesterday." "$25 million," I heard my mother whisper. It was a strangled, wet sound. She covered her mouth with her hand. My father's face turned a pasty gray. He was staring at me, really staring at me for the first time in 8 years. He had built his entire self-worth on the narrative that I was a failure who desperately needed him. And in that moment, in this public courtroom, he was being forced to realize that I had just made more money in a single week than his entire real estate empire made in a year. "$25 million?" Leo echoed, his voice barely a squeak. He looked like he was going to be physically ill. "So," the judge said, leaning back as if to get a better view of the carnage, "we have a company that is not only solvent, but is in fact a critical national security partner. And you, Mr. Ford, have filed a petition claiming it's bankrupt." I was misled by my client," Mr. Ford said, already throwing Leo under the bus to save his own career. "I was told this was a simple personal loan dispute." "This is not a simple dispute," the judge corrected him. "This is malicious interference." She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. When she looked up again, her face was like granite. "Do you have any idea what happens, Mr. Harrison, when you file a fraudulent bankruptcy claim against a government contractor?" Leo just stared blankly at the table. "It triggers an automatic security review," the judge explained, as if to a particularly slow child. "It freezes their accounts. It puts a halt to their security clearance processing. You have, in effect, tried to sabotage a national security operation." The room fell even quieter, if that was possible. "And," the judge continued, her voice dropping lower, "if I find that these documents you submitted are forgeries, if I find that you lied to this court with the intent to harass a federal contractor, you are not looking at a civil penalty. You are looking at federal prison time." My mother let out a genuine sob. "No, he's just a boy. He didn't understand." "Silence in the gallery," the bailiff barked. "I want to see the original loan document," the judge commanded. "Now." Mr. Ford, his hand trembling, passed the single sheet of paper to the bailiff. The judge took it, held it up, and examined the signature. "Ava Harrison," she read. "Dated June 10th, 8 years ago." She looked at me. "Ms. Reed, you maintain this is a forgery." "I do, Your Honor," I said, standing up. My voice was clear and steady. "I never signed that document, and I can prove it." "Show me," the judge said. This was it. The hook was set. Now it was time to reel them in. Eleanor gave me a slight nod. We were ready. "Your Honor," Eleanor announced, "we request permission to display digital evidence on the courtroom monitors." "Granted." Eleanor connected her laptop, and the large screens on either side of the courtroom flickered on. Mr. Harrison's counsel provided a digital copy of this loan agreement as part of discovery, she explained. He sent it as a PDF, claiming it was a scan of the original paper document from 8 years ago. On the screen, the document appeared. It looked official enough. But then Eleanor clicked a button. The screen changed to show a string of technical data. "Digital files have fingerprints," she said. "It's called metadata." She pointed to a line on the screen. "File created, Tuesday, October 12th. 2024 11:52 p.m. Author, Leo MacBook Pro. This document was not created 8 years ago, Your Honor, Eleanor stated, her voice ringing with authority. It was created last Tuesday night. A shocked murmur rippled through the courtroom. Leo's face was a mottled shade of purple. He jumped up again. I rescanned it. That's just the date of the scan. Sit down, Mr. Harrison, the judge ordered. We anticipated that argument, Eleanor continued smoothly. So, we had the signature itself analyzed. The screen zoomed in on the signature, Ava Harrison. This signature is heavily pixelated, Eleanor explained, and if we overlay it with this, another image appeared beside it, a scanned copy of my high school library card application. Eleanor dragged the two signatures on top of each other. They were a perfect pixel-for-pixel match. Every loop, every angle. It's a digital copy and paste, Eleanor declared. He lifted a scan of an old signature and pasted it onto a Word document he created last week. It is a clumsy, amateurish forgery. She turned back to the judge. There was no loan, Your Honor. There is no debt. This entire petition is a work of fiction designed to extort money from my client and destroy her business. Eleanor closed the laptop. The screens went black, but the evidence hung in the air like toxic smoke. Judge Vance looked at the physical paper in her hand with utter disgust and dropped it on her desk as if it were contaminated. "Mr. Ford," she said, her voice dangerously low, "do you have any explanation for why your client's 8-year-old document was created on a laptop last Tuesday?" Mr. Ford stood, grabbed his briefcase, and straightened his tie. "Your Honor," he said stiffly, "I must request a recess to confer with my client. I can no longer represent him if—" "There will be no recess," the judge interrupted. "I've seen enough." She slammed her gavel down, the sharp crack making my mother flinch. "Mr. Harrison, stand up." Leo rose on shaky legs. His arrogance was completely gone. He looked like a child who had just shattered a priceless vase and knew the punishment was coming. "You came into my courtroom," Judge Vance said, leaning forward, her voice shaking with controlled fury. "You used the federal court system as a tool to bully your sister. You forged legal documents. You committed perjury. You attempted to defraud a company that is vital to the security of this nation. I just wanted," Leo stammered. "I don't care what you wanted." She cut him off. "You have wasted this court's time, and you have made a mockery of the law." She looked at the court clerk. "The petition for involuntary bankruptcy is dismissed with prejudice." She wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, "I am referring this entire matter to the United States Attorney's Office for immediate criminal investigation." "Criminal?" my father yelled, bolting up from his seat. "Now hold on! This is a family squabble. You can't arrest my son." "Sit down, sir, or I will have you held in contempt," the judge warned as the bailiff took a step toward my father. My father froze, then slowly sank back down, looking utterly defeated. "I am recommending charges," the judge said. Her eyes locked on Leo for bankruptcy, fraud, forgery, perjury, and attempted interference with a government contractor. Leo's legs buckled. He collapsed back into his chair, staring at his trembling hands. "Mr. Ford," the judge said, "you're lucky I'm not sanctioning you as well. Get your client out of my sight. The U.S. Marshals will be in touch." She banged the gavel one last time. Case dismissed. The courtroom exploded into chaos. My mother was wailing. My sister Chloe was already on her phone, likely trying to do damage control for her social standing. I stood up. I felt light. I felt clean. I turned to look at them. My father was staring at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. He knew. The daughter he'd branded a failure had just annihilated the son he'd crowned a king, and I had done it all without raising my voice. Leo was just sitting there, his head in his hands. Eleanor packed up her laptop, a satisfied smile on her face. "That went rather well," she said. "Yes," I agreed. "It did." I walked toward the exit, which meant I had to pass by their row. My mother reached out and grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Ava," she pleaded. her face a smeared mess of makeup and tears. "Ava, please, you have to fix this. He's your brother. You can't let them send him to prison. Talk to the judge. Tell her it was all a misunderstanding." I looked down at her hand on my arm, the same hand that had so often pushed me away. "I didn't do this, Mother," I said calmly. "He did. He created the document. He filed the lawsuit. He stood in this room and lied." "But you can stop it," she cried. "You have all this money now. You have power. Help him." I gently pried her fingers from my arm. "No," I said. My father looked up then, his eyes burning with a new kind of hatred. "You ungrateful," he began. I cut him off. "I'm not ungrateful, Dad," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm successful, and I'm honest. Two things you never bothered to teach him." I turned my back on them. "Goodbye," I said. I pushed open the courtroom doors and walked out into the bright, quiet hallway. I took a deep, cleansing breath. It tasted like freedom. Behind me, the heavy doors swung shut, sealing them inside with the wreckage they had created. They were trapped, and I was finally free to go home. The wheels of justice often turn slowly, but when you try to defraud the federal government, they spin with terrifying speed. 2 days after the hearing, the FBI raided Leo's luxury apartment. I wasn't there, of course, but the gossip spread like wildfire. Neighbors described agents in windbreakers carrying out boxes of electronics and files. They led Leo out in handcuffs. He wasn't wearing one of his tailored suits this time, just sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked small and scared. The charges were serious. Bankruptcy fraud is one thing, but when you forge documents to interfere with a Department of Defense contract, the government takes it very, very personally. They don't appreciate people playing games with national security. Leo was indicted on 3 counts of fraud, 2 counts of perjury, and 1 count of making false statements to a federal court. My parents, naturally, tried to fix it. My father, Charles, hired the most expensive legal team in the state. He started liquidating assets, selling off pieces of his real estate portfolio and some of his prized classic cars. He leveraged the family business to the hilt. But you can't buy your way out of digital metadata. You can't bribe a timestamp. The evidence Eleanor had presented in court was irrefutable. Leo had created the fake loan on his own computer, and he had been arrogant enough to leave his digital fingerprints all over the crime scene. 6 weeks later, facing the prospect of a decade in prison, Leo took a plea deal. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in a federal penitentiary. 3 years. My mother called me the day he was sentenced. I hadn't blocked her number yet, and I answered out of a morbid curiosity. "Are you happy now?" she shrieked into the phone, her voice unhinged. "Your brother is going to prison. He's going to be in a cage. Are you finally happy, Ava?" I was standing in my kitchen looking out the window at the peaceful mountains. I felt nothing but a quiet calm. "I didn't put him there, Mom," I said. "He did. He tried to ruin my life. He tried to destroy my company. He tried to take the food out of my unborn child's mouth. He was just desperate." She sobbed. "He had debts. These men were threatening him. He was scared. So he decided to destroy me to save himself," I stated. "That's not a brother. That's a predator." "You're cold," she spat. "You're heartless." "I don't have a daughter." "You haven't had a daughter for 8 years," I replied softly. "You only remembered I existed when you thought I had money you could take." I hung up the phone. Then I blocked her number. The fallout didn't end with Leo. My father's pristine reputation, the foundation of his business, shattered. In the world of high-end real estate, trust and image are everything. When the story broke that Charles Harrison's son was a convicted felon who tried to defraud the government, people started asking questions. Did Charles know? Was the family business involved? Deals started falling through. Longtime clients pulled their listings. The prestigious country club indefinitely suspended his membership. The Harrison estate's signs started to gather dust. He didn't go bankrupt, but his kingdom crumbled. He was no longer the king of Westwood. He was just a bitter old man with a son in prison. And then there was Chloe, My little sister, the one who'd been watching TV as I left home all those years ago. She sent me a letter about 2 months after Leo's sentencing. It was on expensive cream-colored stationery that smelled faintly of perfume. Dearest Ava, I've been thinking of you so much. I am just so terribly sorry for everything that happened with Leo. You know, I never supported what he was doing. I told Mom and Dad he was going too far. I've always admired you, Ava. You were always the brilliant one. I'm so proud of your incredible success with Orion. I was just telling my husband Mark that we should all have dinner soon. We would love to see your new home and meet your husband. Let's put all this unpleasantness behind us. Family is everything after all. All my love, Chloe. I read the letter twice, then let out a dry, humorless laugh. She didn't admire me. She didn't care about me. She saw that the Harrison family ship was sinking, and she was trying to secure a spot on my lifeboat. She wanted to be close to the new money, the new power. I took a plain white note card and wrote a single sentence on it. Support that arrives after the battle is not support. It's an apology. I put it in an envelope and mailed it back to her. I never heard from her again. There was a strange loneliness in it all, realizing that your entire biological family is fundamentally toxic, realizing there isn't a single one of them worth salvaging. But it was also incredibly liberating. The anchor had been cut. I was finally drifting free. While my old family's world was imploding, mine was expanding exponentially. The court case had an unforeseen side effect. It made Orion Cybernetics a household name in the corporate world. The Wall Street Journal ran a follow-up feature, not on the family drama, but on the resilience of the company. The narrative was irresistible. The tech firm so solid, so unshakable, that even a malicious, fraudulent bankruptcy attack couldn't leave a scratch. Headlines popped up in tech journals and defense magazines. The ironclad CEO, and how Orion Cybernetics weathered a corporate ambush. The phone started ringing off the hook. Not just government agencies, major banks, international shipping conglomerates, healthcare systems. Everyone wanted the security software built by the unflappable Ava Reed. We hired 50 more engineers in the first 3 months. We had to lease the office space in the building next door just to fit everyone. I was walking through the buzzing office one afternoon, and I overheard a group of new interns talking in the break room. They hadn't seen me. "Have you actually met Ava yet?" one of them asked. "Yeah, she sat in on our code review yesterday," another replied. "She's intense, but man, she knows her stuff. She found a critical vulnerability in my code that 3 senior engineers had missed." "She's a legend," the first one said. "Built this entire place from nothing. No family money, no venture capital. Just pure grit." I smiled to myself and walked away quietly. They respected me. Not because of my last name or who my father was. They respected me for the work. Orion's contracts topped $300 million by the end of that year. We expanded into aerospace and began developing AI security protocols for satellite networks. I agreed to do one interview and only one. A journalist from Forbes came to my office. She sat on the couch taking in the mountain view. "Ms. Reed," she began, "your company's rise has been nothing short of meteoric. But there are whispers of a difficult past, a family dispute. Does that still motivate you?" I looked at her, thinking about Leo in a prison cell and my father in his hollowed-out office. "Motivation evolves," I said carefully. "In the beginning, I was running on anger. I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted to scream to the world that I wasn't a failure. And now?" she asked. "Now I don't care about proving anything to anyone," I said. "Anger is a cheap, dirty fuel. It gets you started, but it can't sustain you. Now I run on purpose. I want to build things that last. I want to create systems that keep people safe. Do you have anything you'd like to say to those who doubted you?" she pressed. I paused, knowing my parents and Chloe would read this article. "Some people," I said slowly, choosing my words with precision, "cannot stand to be wrong. They would rather try to destroy someone else's success than admit they made a mistake in judgment. I have nothing to say to them. My work speaks for itself. The article came out a week later. I had it framed, not out of vanity, but as a reminder. I looked at the photo of myself in the magazine. I looked strong. I looked calm. I didn't look like the girl who once cried on her apartment floor because she couldn't afford her internet bill. I had built a new self from the ground up. My name was Ava Reed. I was a mother, a wife, a CEO. Ava Harrison was gone. She had died in that courtroom the moment the judge's gavel fell. The snow falls thick and heavy in the mountains in winter, covering the world in a blanket of pristine, muffled silence. I live in a house of glass and cedar, nestled into the side of a mountain. It is quiet here. It is a Tuesday night, 5 years after the trial. I'm sitting in the living room, a fire crackling in the stone hearth. My husband, Liam, is on the floor, patiently helping our daughter build a ridiculously tall tower out of wooden blocks. Higher, Daddy, higher. Our daughter, Maya, who is now 5 years old, squeals with delight. She has my dark hair and Liam's kind, bright eyes. She is laughing, a sound so pure and free it feels like a physical warmth in the room. She has never been told to be quiet. She has never been made to feel invisible. In this house, she is the sun around which we all orbit. I watch them play, and I feel a swell of emotion in my chest, so powerful it almost aches. It's gratitude. I have not spoken to my parents in 5 years. I don't know if they are alive or well. I don't know if Leo is out of prison. I don't look them up. People sometimes ask me if I have regrets. They ask if I miss having a family. You only get one mother, they say. Blood is thicker than water. They're wrong. The full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family you choose, the bonds you forge, are stronger than the family you are simply born into. Liam is my family. Maya is my family. My lawyer, Eleanor, who comes to our house for Thanksgiving every year, is my family. The friends who brought me groceries when I was too broke to afford them are my family. Family isn't about shared DNA. It's about shared belief. My parents never believed in me. They bet against me from the very start. Liam believed in me when I had nothing but a crazy idea and a second-hand computer. He believed in me when I was working 20 hours a day. He believed in me when that lawsuit threatened to take everything away. That is love. That is family. Maya knocks the tower of blocks over with a triumphant crash and giggles uncontrollably. "Oh no," Liam says, laughing with her. "We have to rebuild it. We'll make it even better this time." "Better," she shouts. I put my book down and get on the floor with them. "Can I help?" I ask. "Yes," Maya says, handing me a blue block. Mommy makes the foundation. I take the block and place it firmly on the rug. "Okay," I say, "a strong foundation." I look at my daughter's face, so full of trust and joy. One day, she will be old enough to ask about her other grandparents. She will ask why she doesn't have an Uncle Leo. I will tell her the truth. I will tell her that some people in this world are builders and some are breakers. I will tell her that her mother is a builder and that sometimes to build something beautiful and strong, you have to clear away the rot first. "Mommy?" Maya asks, her little hand on my cheek. "Are you crying?" I touch my face and realize I am. A few silent tears, but I'm smiling. "No, sweetie," I say. "I'm just really, really happy." I place the next block on the foundation. Together we build the tower again, higher and steadier than before. My brother wanted to see me broken. My father wanted to see me beg. Instead, they gave me the greatest gift I could ever receive. They forced me to become a fighter. And in that fight, I discovered who I truly was. I am not a victim. I am not a Harrison. I am Ava. I scoop up my daughter and kiss the top of her head. She smells like bath soap and pure innocence. "You'll never know them," I whisper, too quietly for her to hear. "You will never know that coldness. You will only ever know warmth." The wind howls outside, rattling the windows. But inside our home, everything is warm. Everything is safe. They dragged me into a courtroom to destroy me, and in doing so, they set me free. And just as I walked out of that courtroom, I walk through my life now, calm, strong, unshakable. End of story.